What's up guys, my name is PJ and on my channel I talk about some different ways that we can connect more and more to our true self. Today I'm going to talk about one of the most powerful ways that I have discovered when it comes to connecting to our true self, understanding who we really are, our truth, our authentic self. Who is that person? This tool that I'm going to talk about today and what I'm going to actually address in this video is the first step of working with this tool. This tool is called the Enneagram. You may have heard of it. You may have been seeing more and more of it on Instagram. If you go to church, you've probably heard of it. And if you've been in the field of, spirituality, if you've been a spiritual seeker for a while, you may have heard of it as well. Or you may have never heard of it and, maybe just recently someone told you about it and you stumble upon this video now. So for whichever category of that you fall into, I wanted to make this video to give a little very brief intro on the Enneagram because I've made another video on the Enneagram that's a lot more in depth. I'll tag that up there so you can click that and go and watch that. But in this video, it's all about how you can find your type. And, I have found some different ways, some different tips and tricks that may help you on your journey of beginning working with the Enneagram, because finding your type, I believe, is the first step. So what is the Enneagram? I was listening to a very powerful audio program by a gentleman named Russ Hudson. So he's the co-author of one of the best Enneagram books that I have ever discovered, and it's this book. You may have seen the cover of it if you've been in if you've been studying Enneagram for a while, but it's called The Wisdom of the Enneagram, the complete guide to psychological and spiritual growth for the 9 personality types, by Don Richard Risso and Russ Hudson. So I was listening to this audio program by Russ Hudson's new one by Sounds True. I'll put a picture of it up there. And it's a very powerful program, but the one thing I heard in that just recently, just actually right before I jump on this to shoot this video, that I hadn't heard before. And I thought this is so fascinating, and I think it would be a good and awesome way to get started on our journey of finding our type. So Russ Hudson in that audio program said that there was a study done, and he was quoting another gentleman who is, I believe his name is Dr. David Daniels. I believe he's passed away, but he was quoting how he's done a research on this other research. Now, let's talk about what this research was. Apparently, some years ago, a few years ago, a group of psychologists started doing this research on newborn babies, or not necessarily just newborn, but like babies, probably underneath, before the age of 1. And they wanted to get an idea of the different kinds of human temperament. And so they studied all these different babies, how they acted, they took notice, and they did this research. Now, keep in mind, the people that did this research were not Enneagram people. They were not trying to make a point. They just did this research. And they found 9 temperaments, styles of being that human babies operate. And lo and behold, they found 9 different temperaments. And I believe Dr. David Daniels has done a research that goes in conjunction with this, and he's a big Enneagram teacher, or was, I should say, and he combined that study with the types. I haven't looked into it. I'm super excited to actually check it out probably after I shoot this video, but basically, it goes to show that these types are just temperaments. It's a good way to think about it. It's like different human temperaments. And some of the factors that do shape our type, our personality type, our temperament, are nature and nurture. So it's both, right? So it's not just your environment, and it's not just your nature, your DNA, who you're born as. It's a mixture of both. But basically, these types are 9 different ways that humans show up in the world. 9 patterns. I like to think of them as different patterns or energies or archetypes. I really like to think of them as archetypes and superheroes. When you have the Avengers, you have all these different superheroes. And I like to sometimes think of that image of you can't say, you probably can't argue, oh, the superhero is better than the superhero. But like, at the end of the day, the Avengers is meant to be a group or a team where all of the members have unique gifts and skills and abilities that they add to the wholeness of the group. And then together, they make the most badass team ever. So it's not just like one over the other. But basically, these are the 9 Enneagram types are 9 different patterns or different ways that humans show up in the world. And Enneagram goes way, 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 way back in history. People have been talking about it since thousands of years ago. Not in this way, not in this form, but in various forms. People have been addressing these different ways that people show up in the world. And if you hear the dog barking in the background, please don't pay attention to it. I'm a type 9, and sometimes we're good at just like letting let go and let God, or live and let live. So please just like channel that type 9 energy and ignore that if you hear that. But anyways, I was talking about how this tradition of the Enneagram goes far back. And if you look at Christianity, the 7 deadly sins, they're like identifying these like 7 different ways. And then later they added 2 more. I'm not saying Christianity, but in Enneagram, they added 2 more, which were the sins of fear, which the sins in the Enneagram also are called passions or vices. I've made a whole, hour-long video on that. You can check that out. I tag it up there. But basically, you had the 7 deadly sins. They added 2 more, and they were fear and deceit, which are really type 6 and type 3. So you can see how this tradition of the Enneagram kind of has a longer history. But what I'm trying to point to here with saying this is that the way I feel like it's come about is like people, those who study human nature, human behavior, human attitudes, they noticed, as the scientists did in that research, the researchers, they noticed these 9 different ways that people show up. And they are, in Enneagram, we study those 9 different ways. And a good point to keep in mind is that although we definitely have a primary type that we are, we have all these types within us to some different degrees. And so let's just jump right into some of the ways that you can start finding your type. So the first way that you may have heard about, it's a popular way that people go about it, although I don't believe it's the most effective way, is to take a test. That's it. You can take a test and this video is over. I'm just kidding. But basically, taking a test, I don't feel like is the best way. It's proven to be accurate in my case. I took 2 different tests. They came out, I got the same result in both. One was free, one I paid for. But the first way is taking a test. And when it comes to tests, there's one test that's actually by the authors of that book I just showed, by Don Risso and Russ Hudson. So their website is called the Enneagram Institute. That's the organization that they founded. And they have a test that's $12 to take, but it's, to me, in my personal experience, it's the most powerful test I've taken. It's pretty long. It's like 144 questions. It's very in depth. But what I like about this test is that it takes into consideration the fact that we embody all these types, because when you get your test results back after you take this test, you have all the types shown, and it shows a percentage of how much of each type you are. And I really like that about that. As an example, I'll put my own test results up there so you can see I'm a type 9 primarily by a lot, and then you can see a percentage of each one. And actually this test helped me identify what's called my wing. So basically on the Enneagram circle, I'll put a symbol up there. So you can see how each type is surrounded by 2 other types. Each number is surrounded by 2 other numbers. And one of those is basically called your wing. It could be also your both, you have equal amount of both, but it's more rare. It's more likely that one of those wings is dominant. So, in my test results, I had, which I'll put up there now, I had 11%, I believe, of like type 1, and I had 2% of type 8. And I used to think I'm a wing 8. And then I took that test, and it reaffirmed some intuitive hints that I had that no, I am actually 9 wing 1. So the wing really we'll talk about. I've talked about that in other videos. I believe I talked about it in my Enneagram video, which I linked earlier, and it's also linked in the description box. But basically, the wing means like, so you have the primary type, and there's like a hint of that type that's your wing that's next to your type in your personality. So like nobody is pure type. Everybody is type winged. You know, it's like it's a more distinct manifestation of the type, let's say. So basically, I like their test the most, but that is the first way that a lot of people find their type. Now, why do I think that that's not the best way to find your type, especially in the beginning of your journey with the Enneagram? It's very tempting to do so because it's like, oh, I can just answer these questions and then boom, this thing tells me who I am. But that's the reason that it's not powerful in my opinion. It's because somebody else is telling you your type, your temperament, who you are, versus you coming to that realization on your own. So there's a higher level of ownership if you do come to that realization on your own. You own it. You it's like digging for a treasure, right? You're digging for a treasure and then you find this treasure on your own. Now, if somebody else, an archaeologist, found this treasure and then was like, here you go, here's a treasure. Now, it wouldn't take away from the value of that treasure necessarily, but in your own experience, in your perception of its value, it may not be as meaningful because you didn't find it yourself. You know, you could find something less valuable on your own, but it has more value to you because of the journey that you went through to find it. So that's the reason I don't feel like tests are powerful, because I actually, my very, very, very first exposure to Enneagram was about a year prior to the time that I actually started studying the Enneagram, because my first exposure, I took a test. You know, one of my coworkers was like, hey, take this test. Let's see what type you are. And I took it, and I'm pretty interested in learning more about myself, but I took it and I was like, because Enneagram doesn't give you, it doesn't beat around the bush. So it's not as like ego boosting as some of the other type, you know, personality type stuff, systems that are out there. It's not as ego boosting as that. You know, when you read it, it's not like, oh, I feel so great, you know, that I'm this type. It kind of like, oh, like, I don't want to hear about this, you know, just take this away. So I took a test. It told me I'm a type nine, and it gave me all this like, oh, you're like this, and you mess up like this, and you have a tendency to do this. And I was like, all right, great. I'm gonna put this away and not have this voice in my head. But because somebody else was telling me all that, I didn't come to that realization on my own. I never connected with the Enneagram when I took a test. A year later, about a year later, a friend of mine introduced me to it again, and we, you know, started working together. And he really helped me deepen my understanding. And through the way I learned it from him is that we basically, the best way is to, which is my second point. Let's just jump right into it. The best way, in my opinion, is to read all the types or get exposed, get an understanding of all the different types. So a good resource for that is the EnneagramInstitute.com. Well, there are many books, amazing books. The one that I showed earlier, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, I believe that's one of the best books. Another one of my favorite books on the Enneagram to learn about the types. Because, you know, every Enneagram book has to kind of talk about the type description. But out of the ones I've read, the ones that have stuck with me the most, I would say it's that one. And then it's a Christian Perspective on the Enneagram by Richard Rohr and Andreas Ebert, I believe. Those two, I feel like, have the best type descriptions that I've read. But today, I'm going to talk about a different book that's probably the most popular Enneagram book out there. I'm going to talk about a section of it where it briefly talks about each of the types. And so, although I believe that it's good to go read all the types on Enneagram Institute in one of these books, or I actually had made a whole book recommendation series based on Enneagram types. But at the beginning of each of those book recommendation videos, I have a introduction of each type. So you can go watch those as well. I tagged the playlist up there. It has all the videos. And the first 15 minutes of each of them, it's basically the type introduction in my words, based on my understanding. So if you want to check those out, you can do so as well. But I'm going to talk about this section in this book called The Road Back to You, which, like I said, is probably the most popular Enneagram book. It's not the most in-depth in my perspective, but it's definitely a good starting point, and it's a great place to kind of get introduced to all the types. But I like the section that they have where they just talk about, it's like 2 sentences about each type. So I'm going to read that with you right now, because although I want you to go read all the types, or I recommend to you, I don't, not that you have to, but I recommend to you that you go read all the types in a more deeper way. This little brief excerpt will help you maybe find which one you want to dive more deeply into first, because obviously reading 9 big bulky articles or blog posts or whatever chapter in a book may take more time. So let's just jump right into these 9 blurbs of this book called The Road Back to You. All right, so this is the book, and I am going to just jump right into that section of it. I ate a Starburst before this, so that was my bookkeeper. All right, let's just jump right into it. So, type 1. This is a little excerpt on type 1. Type 1s are called the perfectionist. According to Ian Morgan Cron and Suzanne Stabile, type 1s are ethical, dedicated, and reliable. They are motivated by a desire to live the right way, improve the world, and avoid fault and blame. Type 1. Type 2, they're called the helpers. They're warm, caring, and giving. They are motivated by a need to be loved and needed, and to avoid acknowledging their own needs. Again, I'm not taking credit for these little excerpts. I want to give all credit to the authors of this book. And I know I say it's not the most in-depth, but I definitely think that it has things that I haven't seen mentioned in other places, in other Enneagram books that are deeper. It has like little funny stories and like spiritual gifts section, and 20 ways that you may be a type 8 or stuff like that I thought are pretty helpful and quick to grasp the Enneagram. All right, type 3. They are called the performer. They are success-oriented, image-conscious, and wired for productivity. They're motivated by a need to be or appear to be successful and to avoid failure. Type 4. They're called the romantic. They are creative, sensitive, and moody. They are motivated by a need to be understood, experience their oversized feelings, and avoid being ordinary. I would also say that they are very unique and artistic and creative. So, well, they mentioned creative, but they are very artistic. So just keep that in mind as well. Type 5s, they're called the investigator. They are very analytical, detached, and private. Well, actually, they don't say they are very. I just added that. But they are analytical, detached, and private. They are motivated by a need to gain knowledge, conserve energy, and avoid relying on others. Type 6, the loyalist. I also believe it's called the skeptic in some other Enneagram books. They are committed, practical, and witty. They are worst case scenario thinkers who are motivated by fear and the need for security. Type 7s. They are called the enthusiast in this book. They are fun, spontaneous, and adventurous. They are motivated by a need to be happy, to plan stimulating experiences, and to avoid pain. Type 8. They are called the challengers. They're commanding, intense, and confrontational. They are motivated by a need to be strong and avoid feeling weak or vulnerable. Type 9s, yay, the peacemakers. So type 9s have a tendency to put themselves last, and the Enneagram just adds to that too, puts us last. But anyways, I digress. The type 9s are called the peacemaker, like I said. They're pleasant, laid back, and accommodating. They're motivated by a need to keep the peace, merge with others, and avoid conflict. Okay, so that's a very just brief little few sentences on each of the types. And just from what I just read to you, you may have resonated with one or two or three of them. So I recommend that you go and check those out. Go on to enneagraminstitute.com, which is a free resource, and read more about those particular types first. The thing is, and I'm going to actually talk about those in just a second, but there are some obstacles that come up of not being able to find your type. Now, some people, there are many different situations that may happen. Some people may read their type description and just immediately it's just like people online say, I feel so attacked or I feel so seen. Like, you're gonna feel so seen. It's like the Enneagram description is like inside you, and it's like this person is like writing everything you think and then writing every action or motivation behind the action. This is a really important point. The thing about the Enneagram that's so powerful is that the Enneagram talks about the motivation behind the behavior. So if another personality typing system may look at the behavior, the Enneagram is in here. So that's why you feel so attacked, you feel so seen, because it's like not just like what you did, because you can do the same thing from entirely different motivations. You can do something out of guilt or you can do it out of love, right? And those are like worlds apart. But the Enneagram goes to the motivation, the core reason why you decide to do something. Like if a 9 is people pleasing, why are they doing that? What's driving that? And what the why is what may be surprising and actually very, I would say, exciting, although not comfortable to find out about, because it's like we all like to feel seen. We all like to feel like somebody understands us. And when you find your Enneagram type, you're going to have that feeling. Like, as uncomfortable as it may be, it's kind of exciting that someone knows that much about you. And what I also love about the Enneagram, and I've talked about this in my Vice and Virtue for each type video, and also the definition of the arrows in the Enneagram, which I'll tag that up there. It's one of my favorite concepts of the Enneagram that I discussed in that video. But what I love about the Enneagram is that it doesn't just say, here you go, here's your type, here's your patterns. It says, here's also a map to use to grow with the Enneagram. And another thing Russ Hudson said in that audio program I was listening to earlier was, he was talking about how Enneagram is like a map. And he made a really good point. And he's actually a 9-wing 1, I believe. I read it online. I don't know how true that is. But so I really resonated with his way of teaching the Enneagram. But basically, he said that a map, it's the usefulness of a map is if you use it, to travel, to take a journey. That the map is, like if you have a treasure map, the value of that map is you following its destination, its directions, and getting to that treasure, getting to that destination. So the value is actually in taking the journey. And the Enneagram gives us a map of our personality, but it also gives you a map and really a roadmap of growth. And that's the part of the Enneagram that I love, because if you just had another test or whatever, another personality typing system, just say, this is who you are, done, like goodbye. That's not helpful for anybody. The Enneagram doesn't just leave it there. You have to know you're in a prison to be able to escape from that prison, right? If you don't know you're stuck in a prison, you would not be able to break out of it. And the Enneagram just shows you the prison that you are in, of your own personality patterns. And a lot of times these patterns, these ways of being, they formed in childhood. And most often, whatever situation we were presented with in our environment, in our surrounding, in our family, we may have not had the right coping mechanisms and right strategies and tools to deal with whatever it was. So our personality, our ego was starting to form, and it came to our rescue by forming these patterns. Then you skip, you fast forward 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever it is, and you are still operating based on the same programs that were installed in childhood Now that you're, 40 years old, 50 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, you're still running the same programs. It's like running the same iOS on iPhone 12 as the one that you had on iPhone 1. It's just like it's just not going to work. But we try to make it work and we don't realize what we're doing. We're like, oh, like for example, the iPhone metaphor, it's like, oh, why is this iPhone running so slow? This is supposed to be like the best iPhone, whatever, like iPhone 12. Why is this doing this? And then someone's like, dude, why are you like comes along and they know what you're doing and they're like, why are you running iOS 1 on iPhone 12? If you fast forward or if you upgrade to the version that's meant for that type, to the highest version, you can think about that in Enneagram language, like your growth arrow, the direction of your what they call like health or integration point, like install that, shoot towards that, aim for that, and then you upgrade it. I really just push this metaphor to its limits. I feel like it's breaking apart right now, but but basically upgrade that iPhone and then it'll start running perfectly. So what I was trying to say is that these programs that were installed in us in childhood, just because we didn't have better tools, we didn't have better coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms, they get formed and then they start running our lives. It's like the habit is just so ingrained that we don't even realize. Like you may be people pleasing out of habit. You may be overextending yourself out of habit. And these are some things like nines do. The overextending is more like a two kind of thing. You just may be doing all these things that you don't know why, but you also don't really think that you're doing anything that's wrong or off or bad because it's just now become a part of like the story of this is who I am. Uh, this, if your pattern has been people pleasing, it's like this is just who I am. This is what I do. The Enneagram comes along and it just shows you all these patterns that are outdated, and then it helps you transform that. Now, it's hard for me to stop myself from going deeper into the Enneagram just because I get so excited about it because of the transformation that it caused in my life in a relatively short time, I would say. It's not like I meditated for 20 years and then, I transformed. No, in about a year, like it just helped me see this. Having this map is so helpful. And I believe like 2020 and 2020 was so challenging for so many of us, and 2021 they're pushing us these years, these events in the world, on the world stage, they're pushing us into a desire for a greater self-knowledge, because it's like, dude, I'm suffering, let me learn more about myself, let me understand myself better so I can deal and not only survive in the world but thrive in it. And these tools are becoming more popular in my belief because it's like the challenges are really just a catalyst for us to awaken to deeper levels of understanding of ourselves. And the Enneagram is such a powerful, like quickly powerful. It's just like a very powerful tool that you start using and immediately you start seeing results. So finding your type, like I said, it's the first step. And I hope that that little description that I gave from that book was helpful for you. But again, obviously, like I said, it's not the journey itself. Now, let's talk about some obstacles that may come up on your journey of trying to find your type. So, like I said, some people may just read it and feel so seen and just they're like, that's it. Some other people may read another type, like this happened to me. So I had taken a test. The test had said I'm a 9, right? Back in the days. Then I started reading the Enneagram in this way. I started to wanting to find my type in this way. And I was like, I'm a type 3. Like I read type 3 and I was just like, I'm a type 3. I shift and I'm like a chameleon and I do these things. And I was like, I'm a type 3. But also on a deeper level, I realized that a part of me wanted to be type 3 because it thought type 3 is cool. I did not want to be a type 9. I did not want to be labeled as like in that category. I thought when I first read it, I had an aversion to my own type. Like I didn't want to see that much about myself. Truth hurts sometimes, and especially truth like when it comes in the in Enneagram's form, is so potent and dense in terms of like just so much there's so much there, even in like just one time of reading your type description. There's so much there that sometimes your first reaction may be like to push it away and say I'm another type, because to really dive deeply within in your own type, that may require a lot of work. That may require a lot of honest self-assessment that may be very uncomfortable, especially for type 9s. Another name for type 9s, well, not not name, but a name for their passions in the Enneagram is called self-forgetting. The type 9s want to forget themselves, so they often want to not look at excuse me, uncomfortable realities that they actually would benefit from addressing. And so that being their tendency, when I first read my type, I was just like, okay, no, like that just can't be it. It took a lot. I mean, I don't say a lot, but it took a few weeks of just really being honest and looking at these next points I'm going to actually mention. Is like how I was able to see myself more clearly and get out of that misidentification or mistyping, as people would say. So just be aware that you may want to identify as the type that you feel like is idealized in your perspective. Now, no type is better than any other type. No type is worse off than any other type. Like I said, all types are they're just equal. They're just different expressions, right? So, for example, like if you go to a buffet, there's so many different foods, and different people like different foods. So it's like, can you say, oh, this food is better than this? You know, like different flavors of ice cream. Let's use that metaphor. It's like when you have these different flavors of ice cream, some people may like chocolate, some people may like vanilla, some people may like strawberry. And it's just none of them are better than any other. It's just a different expression of the ice cream, let's just say. And these types are no type is better or worse than any other type. They're just equal. So just be aware of that trap of the idealized self-image. Which, side note, very interestingly, again going back to like one of my favorite, probably my favorite part of the Enneagram, which is the direction of the arrows. Type 9s, their integration point or their health point, or like when their program starts relaxing and they become the best expression of themselves, which is really, it's an expression of their true self, their higher self. When that starts happening, they start looking like type 3s. So part of me intuitively knew that there's something about type 3 that I aspire to be like. And even without the Enneagram, I was like, I like when I'm like this. I like it when I'm like active, pursuing goals, doing stuff, getting stuff done. Like I like that. Now, I may not always be the best at it if I fall into my patterns and types tendencies, but at least I just intuitively had that aspiration. So it's very interesting. The arrows, when you start getting into that point, it's very interesting. Now, this is actually my second point, and I'm glad I brought up the arrows. Another way where you may be tiptoeing between two different types. You can't really figure it out. Start looking at the stress point and the health point of these types. So, for example, type 9s go to 3, like I said, in health, and they go to 6 in stress. And when their health, when things are just going south, they start looking like or appearing like a type 6. And this is helpful in identifying your true type, because let's say I somehow was, okay, that 3 situation, I was identifying as a type 3. Then I looked at like, type 3s go to 6 in health, and they go to 9 in stress. And I was like, do I become like this? And when I was honest with myself, I was like, no, this doesn't, like, you want to be this, but you're not this. So that's another thing, another way to help you. Another way to help you if you're struggling to figure out which type you are exactly, look at the wings. Look at the what types are next to them and see if those types are you know that wing may actually be your actual type. That also tends to happen sometimes where you're like, maybe you're between two types, maybe they're the wings, maybe like one of them is your primary, the other one is your wing. Maybe the one that you think is your wing is actually your primary and the other one is your wing. So look at the wings also. So for example, if I thought I'm type 3, when I looked at 2 and I looked at 4, does that really resonate? It didn't for me. I mean, it did to some degrees, but it also didn't. So just pay attention to that too, as well. That's going to be helpful in discovering your type. Now, another thing that really helped me finally identify my type, truly like deeply, not just like kind of believe it. Like I was like, okay, fine, I'm a type 9. Fine, Enneagram, you got me. What did it for me ultimately was when I thought about who I was when I was 13, well, really like 14, 15, 16, when I had almost no responsibilities, no, just like could do whatever I want without like thinking about, oh, how's this gonna affect me? Like when I would just in that period of life, I was just such a type 9. I was just like, that is definition of type 9 of who I was back then. And so through that, I was able to kind of really, not kind of, really just buy it, own it. I'm like, okay, I'm a type 9. Because, as I got older, 16, 17, 18, 19, those ages, I started really getting into self-development. I was always a really big fan of role-playing games, in Xbox and stuff. And these role-playing games always gave your character an opportunity to improve and get better. And I just became obsessed with that concept. Like, it just stuck with me. I was like, dude, like, we can always get better and better and better. And self-development was a way of me, like, realizing that game version of me, that player version of me. Player version of me sounds bad, but that character, like, I became the superhero of my own game, let's say, and I started wanting to get better. So I started getting into self improvement, and the self improvement, self development industry, you can say, is a very type 3 like industry. It's a very type 3 like uh, category of information, let's say. It's all about like, set a goal, achieve it, you can do it, do whatever it takes. Like it's like a lot of that. And so that being in that had kind of skewed my vision of my type. But prior to starting all that, when I looked back to who I was before all that, then I was like, okay, dude, like you're 9, you know. And again, let me make a very important point that this is more of an advanced point to make, but I believe it's not about finding your type and then getting stuck in your type more. Like for example, finding your astrology type and then getting stuck in that more. Like, oh, I'm Libra, and then that becomes another way for you to be more stuck in ego identity. Now, ego is not bad per se. Our personality structure is not bad, but when we don't have a bigger context of our being, of our true self, and that is the only context, our personality is the only context, the only level of being, and we're not even aware of it, then that's not helpful, right? Because we're not utilizing, we're running based on habits and programs versus utilizing conscious choice, which brings us freedom. Like I have a freedom to choose differently than what my natural tendency may be. So that is the freedom that Enneagram brings us. But what I was trying to say is that we don't want to just find our type and just get stuck in that, right? I believe that what we want to do is find our type with the Enneagram, learn everything we can about it, observe ourselves, which it really is when we say do the work of the Enneagram, what we're really talking about is like, okay, now that you have this map, observe yourself. When do you start acting like, showing this tendency of your type in this way? When do you start doing that? Watch yourself in action when you're about to do that, and then choose differently, choose other than that. So if my tendency as a type 9 is to not say no when I need to, and then become resentful that I've said yes to something that I didn't want to do in the first place, and then become stubborn and passive aggressive to just still maintain some sense of like control over the situation. If I know that, then I can literally save myself all that trouble if I step out of my programming, utilize conscious choice through the help that Enneagram gave me, showed me, oh, I have that tendency to do that. Okay, now I'm about to do that again. Let me pause, let me breathe, let me reflect, let me center myself and choose differently. That's the power of the Enneagram. So what I'm trying to say is like, we don't want to just glamorize our ego more, We want to identify it, see it clearly, and then see it for what it is. It's just an aspect of our being. It's a very helpful aspect of us. Like, for example, if you don't have the ego, me, PJ, the type 9 person, if I didn't have this, I wouldn't be able to make this video for you. If I was just like so just pure spirit and just didn't say anything, just sat here, which that has its own value. If someone's like enlightened and their presence alone, without any manifestation of personality per se, that is transformational alone. But for the sake of like our mere mortals, so to speak, like it's helpful to have a personality, but it's not helpful when the personality is all you think you are. So I just think that's such an important point. I would hate for somebody to get I would rather somebody doesn't get exposed to Enneagram if they're just going to become more identified with like, I'm a type 9, so like I just do this. This is just who I am. No, like this is where you are, but then when you look at like the direction of the arrows, like who do you show up as or look like when you are in your health point? Because what that really shows ultimately is that that's when the ego has loosened its hold on you, because that's literally like your spirit flowing through you, and from like it's your higher self, that's that health point. It's basically saying like you've done the work. It's like a reward in a sense. You've done the work. You've been able to observe yourself, observe these patterns that the Enneagram helped you identify and helped show you, and now you've been able to relax the personality. So what is beyond the personality, a consciousness that's beyond the ego, is now manifesting itself through the personality, through the ego, but it's like wearing it like a loose garment, which is, I believe, what Jesus says. Like, wear the world, wear the ego, wear the personality like a loose garment. So it's like it's there and it serves the purpose, but don't get so wrapped up in it, so to speak. Anyways, okay, I want to now jump into some last points on this journey of getting started with the Enneagram. Okay, I honestly went way deeper than I intended to, but the Enneagram is just such a deep well. It really is. When you start drinking from it, it's just like it never runs out. Russ Hudson, who has been studying Enneagram for probably, not probably, he said decades, and is one of the top people. He said like I'm still learning more. I'm still growing in my understanding. So it may tend to happen that you study the Enneagram a little bit. I know it has for me, and then you think you know everything, And it's not about knowing everything, but it's just the fact that this knowledge is so deep and has such deep roots that it keeps on expanding in you. So this journey, this step of finding your type is just the beginning of a very, very transformational journey. So I ended up going deeper because it's like it's all so connected as well. It's like, yeah, you found your type, but like immediately you start having these conversations about arrows, the health point, the stress point, the integration, disintegration, the wings, and then deeper than that is subtypes, all that stuff. It can go so deep, but I wanted to really just, friend to friend kind of, as someone who's been maybe on this journey, maybe just a little bit longer than you, and has learned some things already that may be helpful for you and save you some time. I wanted to share those with you, and I felt like I need to express more than just find your type, read the descriptions, and then boom. Like, it's deeper than that, and its potential for changing your life and transformation is more than that. And I wanted to express that in this video. So the very, very last point, if you are confused about what type you are, this helped me and it may help you. There's a section on the EnneagramInstitute.com when you go on the different type description pages. It says famous people of this type, and many different Enneagram websites have that feature. And when I was confused about whether I'm type 3 or 9, I read some of these type 3s, and I was like, dude, I am not that. Like, I think Tony Robbins, I think, was a type 3, or listed as a type 3 there. I think maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger was that, and I was just like, I'm not Arnold. I can't even do an accent. See, I can't even do an accent, Arnold accent. So I'm not Arnold, and that should be the title of this video. Okay, no, but I realized when I read the type 9's famous people, on the other hand, I was like, yeah, like I could totally see myself being that, and or more accurately, my personality being like that, expressing itself like that, my programming being like that. So that is the last point that I think may help you a lot. I truly hope that this video is helpful for you. If you stumble upon it, you were probably looking, for answers to how to find your type. And I hope that this video serves you well on your journey with the Enneagram. And I have more videos on the Enneagram. I have book recommendations for each of the types, which has been very popular. Some of the most popular videos that I've made. And I have more videos on the Enneagram on my channel. I'll tag some of my favorite ones personally. The first one is like, what is the Enneagram? It's more in depth about the types. Like I said, the book recommendations, and then the arrows video, and the vice and virtue, which is maybe just a few videos after, prior to this video, maybe 2 or 3 videos prior to this one, is when I talked about that. So I believe all of those can be very good and helpful videos on your journey, and maybe not at this beginning stage of working with Enneagram, but maybe at the later stages you start wanting to go back to those and look at those and watch some of those. So anyways, I hope this video is helpful for you. Thank you for your time, for spending it with me. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps me understand and know what content, what type of video, what topics you guys like to hear about. And if you enjoyed the video and want to see more videos like it, please subscribe, as when you subscribe, YouTube's algorithm tends to show the channels that you're subscribed to more to you. So if you want to, stay up to date, watch these videos, please subscribe to my channel. And lastly, I am starting to want to write more content in the written format, and I have a sign up for my newsletter link down below, and sooner rather than later, I'm going to start maybe putting some different PDF files, some different additional things that will be only available through the newsletter. So please join my email list as well if you feel inclined to. And that's it. Again, my name is PJ. I hope that this video was helpful for you, and I will see you guys hopefully in the next video.